I never questioned my life. Not once. I was the kind of man who believed in the simplicity of things. Work hard, love your family, and life would reward you in kind. That's what I thought, until the day I learned that even my own name didn't belong to me. It started with a casual conversation. I was in the kitchen rinsing a coffee mug when my wife, Celeste, called out from the other room, laughing as she rocked our newborn son in her arms. "You know, he really does look like him." I froze. Him? I turned off the faucet, the water still swirling down the drain as my heart started to pound. "Who's him?" I asked, forcing a laugh, trying to keep my voice light. Celeste hesitated just for a second. A flicker of something crossed her face, too fast for me to catch. Then she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, you know," she said, waving it off. "Just a silly thought." But it wasn't just a silly thought. I knew my wife. I knew when she was keeping something from me. That night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, listening to the slow, rhythmic breaths of the woman I had loved for over a decade. My mind raced. What did she mean? Who did our son look like? The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I bought a DNA test. It felt ridiculous, paranoid even, but I couldn't shake the weight pressing on my chest. I swabbed my own cheek, then my son's, and sent the samples off. I told myself I was being irrational, that Celeste would probably laugh when I told her later, that I would laugh too. 2 weeks later, the results came back, and just like that, I ceased to exist. The paper in my hands was shaking. My son, the boy I had rocked to sleep, the child I had dreamed of raising, was not mine. Not even a fraction of me ran through his veins. My stomach dropped. My hands felt numb. Celeste had lied to me. I didn't confront her right away. Couldn't. I was trapped in my own mind, replaying every moment of the past year, searching for the cracks I had missed. Had she been acting differently, coming home late? Was there a name that had come up too often in conversation? I thought I was strong enough to handle the truth, but I wasn't prepared for what I was about to uncover. I wasn't just raising another man's child. I was the last to know, and once I learned the full truth, I wouldn't be able to stay. The envelope with the DNA results sat on my desk for hours before I could bring myself to open it. My hands hovered over it, my chest tightening with every second that passed. A part of me wanted to rip it apart without ever looking inside, to pretend I had never gone down this road. But another part, the part that already knew the truth deep in my gut, needed to see it, needed to read those words with my own eyes. When I finally unfolded the paper, the world around me blurred. The document was cold, clinical, without emotion. Probability of paternity, 0%. A simple line, just a few numbers and letters, yet it was the most devastating thing I had ever read. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself, my breath shallow. My vision darkened at the edges, and for a moment, I thought I might pass out. I forced myself to sit down, my heart pounding in my ears, loud enough to drown out everything else. The chair beneath me felt foreign, like I was floating above my own body, watching some poor fool realize his entire life had been built on a lie. Because that's what it was now, a lie. Every "I love you," every shared moment, every late-night whisper in the dark, now tainted. Celeste had let me believe this child was mine. She had looked me in the eyes, held my hand as I cried tears of joy at the birth of our son, knowing full well that he wasn't mine. My stomach turned violently, and I had to brace myself against the desk again to keep from doubling over. I needed answers. I needed to hear her say it, to look me in the eye and explain how she had let me build a future around a child that wasn't mine. But at the same time, I wasn't sure if I could handle hearing the words come from her lips. I waited until she came home that evening, carrying a grocery bag in one hand and her phone in the other. She looked up and smiled at me the way she always did, so effortlessly, like nothing was wrong, like we were just another happily married couple ending the day together. I held up the DNA results. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered just slightly. "About what?" "You already know," I said, my voice sounding foreign and strained. "Don't pretend you don't." She set the groceries down and straightened her shoulders. "Clive, I have no idea what you're talking about. I felt something snap inside me. Not anger, no, that would have been too easy. It was something colder, deeper. You're really going to do this? I whispered. You're really going to lie to my face right now? She shifted, her eyes darting toward the door like she was already planning an escape. That told me everything. Who is he? I asked. The words felt thick on my tongue, like they didn't belong in my mouth. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. She blinked once, twice, before she finally exhaled and looked away. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to say his name. She bit her lip, something flickering behind her eyes. Guilt? Fear? I couldn't tell anymore. Finally, she whispered it, and the moment she did, my world tilted on its axis. Because I knew him. I knew him very well. The name that left Celeste's lips hit me like a brick to the chest. It wasn't just some random man, a stranger I could direct all my anger toward. No, that would have been too easy. The truth was far worse. The name she whispered belonged to someone I had trusted, someone who had been in my life for years, woven into my memories, my moments, my milestones. Henry, my best friend. The room suddenly felt suffocating, as if the walls had closed in around me. I tried to speak, but my throat locked up. Celeste didn't move, didn't even try to reach for me. She just stood there, waiting, watching, as if she had already accepted what was coming. Maybe she had known all along that the truth would come out one day. Maybe she had prepared for this moment. But I hadn't. I had never imagined this level of betrayal. Not from her, not from him. When my voice came out, hoarse, barely above a whisper, "How long?" She hesitated. "Does it matter?" I slammed my fist down on the counter, the sound echoing through the kitchen. "Of course it matters." I shot back, my body trembling with something I couldn't even put into words. Rage, grief, maybe both. Celeste swallowed hard. Her hands clutched the fabric of her sweater, twisting it as she struggled to find the words. "It was a mistake. A mistake." I let out a bitter laugh, running a hand through my hair. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk at the store. A mistake is missing a turn on the highway. You don't accidentally sleep with my best friend and lie about it for an entire year. Celeste. She winced, but I wasn't done. Did he know? I demanded. She hesitated again, and that was my answer. My stomach twisted violently. Henry had known. He had known this whole time, and he had said nothing. He had smiled in my face, shaken my hand, looked at my son, his son, and never once had the decency to tell me the truth. I had brought him gifts when his own child was born. I had toasted drinks with him at my wedding. I had stood by his side through some of the hardest moments of his life, and all the while he had been stabbing me in the back. I stepped away from her, needing space, needing air, but no matter how far I moved, the weight on my chest only grew heavier. My entire life was unraveling before my eyes, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. "You have every right to hate me," Celeste murmured, her voice barely audible. I laughed again, but it was hollow, empty. "Hate you? I don't even know who you are anymore." Silence stretched between us, thick and unbearable. The sound of the fridge humming, the distant ticking of the wall clock. It was all too loud, pressing against my ears like static. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered. I turned to face her, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "But you did. You chose to, over and over again." She didn't argue. She didn't try to deny it. Maybe in her own way she thought her silence was mercy. But there was no mercy in betrayal. I couldn't stay in that house any longer. My skin itched, my head pounded, and I needed out. Without another word, I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, the weight of her stare burning into my back. I drove without direction, without thought, the road stretching endlessly before me. Streetlights flickered past, neon signs blurred into streaks of color, but I saw none of it. My mind was stuck on one thing, replaying over and over again like a broken record. My son wasn't my son, and I had no idea what to do next. I didn't know how long I had been driving. The city lights had faded behind me, swallowed by the endless stretch of highway and the pitch-black sky above. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. I kept the windows rolled down, letting the cold night air bite at my skin, hoping it would keep me grounded, keep me from drowning in the thoughts circling my mind like vultures, picking apart what was left of me. Henry, Celeste, my son. No, her son. The truth sat in my chest like a stone, too heavy to move. I kept expecting to wake up, for this to be some kind of sick, twisted dream. But the pain was real. The betrayal was real. And no matter how far I drove, I couldn't outrun it. My phone vibrated in the passenger seat. I glanced at it, already knowing who it was before I even saw the screen. Celeste. I didn't answer. A minute later, another call. Then another. Each time, I let it ring until it stopped. What could she possibly say to me now? What words could fix what had been broken? Eventually, I pulled into an empty gas station off the highway, parking beside a lone pump. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed, flickering slightly, casting an eerie glow over the cracked pavement. I stepped out of the car, stretching my stiff legs, trying to shake the tension gripping my body like a vice. Inside, the place was empty except for the bored-looking cashier leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, but as I reached for my wallet, my fingers brushed against the envelope in my pocket. The DNA results. I pulled it out, staring at it like it was some foreign object, like it wasn't the reason my entire world had just been turned inside out. "Rough night?" the cashier asked, not even looking up. I let out a breath, shaking my head. "Something like that." He chuckled dryly. "Yeah, been there." I almost laughed. "No, you haven't. Not like this." But I didn't say anything. Instead, I paid for my water and walked back to my car, sliding into the driver's seat with a heavy sigh. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Celeste. It was Henry. My fingers clenched around the device, my nails digging into my palm. I stared at his name on the screen, rage bubbling beneath my skin. Of all the people in the world, he had been the one I trusted the most. He had been there through every milestone. College, my wedding, the birth of my son. And the entire time, he had been lying to my face. The call ended, only for a message to pop up immediately after. "Henry, we need to talk. Please, just let me explain." Explain? What was there to explain? He had slept with my wife. He had fathered a child with her. He had watched me raise the child, knowing the truth, and said nothing. Another message. "Henry, I never wanted it to happen this way. It's not what you think." I gritted my teeth. Not what I think. How else was I supposed to take this? Was I supposed to believe it was all just a mistake? A moment of weakness? That it just happened? Like Celeste had said? No, that wasn't good enough. I needed answers. Before I could stop myself, I called him back. He picked up on the first ring. "Clive." His voice was cautious, hesitant, like he was afraid I might reach through the phone and strangle him. "Talk," I said, my voice void of emotion. There was a pause, then a deep sigh. "I never meant to hurt you," he started. I laughed bitterly. "You meant to hurt me? Then what was your plan, Henry? To keep lying until the day I died? To let me raise your kid and never know the difference?" "It wasn't like that," he said quickly. I didn't know at first. I swear I didn't. Celeste never told me. I only found out recently." My grip on the phone tightened. "How recently?" He hesitated. "How recently?" 3 months ago." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly through my nose. 3 months. For 3 months, he had carried this secret, walking around with the knowledge that he had stolen my life out from under me. "You should have told me," I said, my voice low. "I wanted to, but Celeste, don't." I cut him off before he could finish. "Don't you dare blame this on her. You made your own choices." Silence stretched between us. "Are you still at home?" he finally asked. I frowned. "What? Did you leave?" I hesitated. Something about the way he asked made me uneasy. "Why does it matter?" Another pause, then quieter, almost guilty, he said, "She's looking for you." She's scared, Clive. I don't care, I snapped. She lost the right to be scared when she decided to build a life on a lie. I get it, he said. I do. But just don't do anything stupid, okay? I nearly laughed again. The audacity of this man, to act concerned for me after everything he had done. I'm done talking, I said flatly, and before he could say another word, I hung up. I sat there in the quiet, gripping the steering wheel, staring out into the empty parking lot. My whole life had imploded in the span of a day. My marriage, my friendship, my identity as a father, all of it had been ripped away. And the worst part? I still had no idea what to do next. I didn't go back home that night. Couldn't. The house wasn't mine anymore. The memories inside those walls had rotted from the inside out, hollowed by lies, deception, and a betrayal so deep it made my skin crawl. It felt like if I stepped back inside, I would be walking into the carcass of a life that had died without me even realizing it. So I drove. I let the road stretch endlessly before me, my hands gripping the wheel, my knuckles white from the force of it. My mind refused to settle. It kept replaying the past like an old, glitching film reel. Every moment with Celeste, every late-night conversation with Henry, every second I had spent believing I was someone I wasn't. Somewhere along the highway, I pulled into a deserted rest stop. The parking lot was empty except for a single 18-wheeler idling near the edge of the lot. The air was thick with the smell of diesel and damp asphalt. I turned off the engine and let my head fall against the steering wheel, the weight of exhaustion settling deep into my bones. For the first time since reading those DNA results, I let myself feel it. All of it. The betrayal, the anger, the grief, the overwhelming sense of, who the hell am I now? My breath came in short, shaky bursts, and for a terrifying moment, I thought I might actually break. But I didn't. Instead, I forced myself to sit up, reaching for my phone. Before I could think better of it, I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over the only name that felt like a lifeline in the storm of my thoughts. My brother, Everett. We weren't close, not like we used to be. Life had pulled us in different directions. He had his own family, his own responsibilities, and we hadn't spoken in months. But if there was anyone in the world who could anchor me right now, it was him. I hit the call button. It rang 3 times before a groggy voice answered. Clive? What the hell, man? There was a pause. It's almost 3 in the morning. I know, I said. My voice was rough, strained. There was a rustling sound, like he was sitting up. His tone shifted instantly. What's wrong? I opened my mouth, but for a moment, I couldn't speak. How was I supposed to explain what had happened? How was I supposed to put into words that my wife had been unfaithful, that my son wasn't my son, that my best friend had stolen my life out from under me? Finally, I just said, I need to see you. Everett didn't ask why. He didn't hesitate. You still in town? No. I don't even know where I am. I glanced at the dimly lit sign near the road. Somewhere off Route 87. A rest stop, about an hour out. I'm sending you my address. Come here. I exhaled, nodding even though he couldn't see me. Thanks, man. Just drive safe, he said. And Clive? Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. I hung up and stared at the address he had just sent. An hour. That was all that separated me from the one person in my life who might actually understand what I was going through. I put the car into gear and started driving. By the time I pulled into Everett's driveway, the exhaustion was like a physical weight pressing down on me. His house was modest, a single-story home with a porch light casting a dim glow over the front steps. The curtains in the living room were drawn back, and I could see him standing there, waiting. I barely had time to step out of the car before he opened the front door. He was barefoot, wearing an old t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair a mess from sleep, but his eyes were sharp, scanning me like he was trying to assess just how bad things really were. Come inside, he said. I followed him in, the warmth of the house a stark contrast to the cold that had settled in my chest. He led me to the kitchen, where a coffee pot was already brewing, the rich scent filling the space. He didn't ask questions, not yet. He just poured 2 cups, sliding one across the counter toward me. I took a sip, my hands still shaking slightly. I don't even know where to start. Start at the beginning, he said simply. And don't leave anything out. So I did. I told him everything. About Celeste, about Henry, about the DNA results and how they had unraveled everything I thought I knew, about how I had spent the past few hours driving aimlessly, trying to escape something that felt inescapable. Everett listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with each passing moment. By the time I finished, he let out a slow breath, setting his cup down with a quiet clink. That's a hell of a thing, he muttered, rubbing a hand over his face. No kidding, I said bitterly. You got a plan? He asked. I laughed, short and humorless. If I did, I wouldn't be here. Everett nodded, leaning back in his chair. Okay, so what do you want to do? The question hit me harder than I expected. What did I want? Did I want revenge? Did I want answers? Did I want to disappear entirely, erase every trace of the life I had built with Celeste and start over somewhere else? I don't know, I admitted. I don't even know who I am anymore. He studied me for a long moment before finally saying, then maybe it's time to figure that out. Those words settled deep into my bones, anchoring me in a way nothing else had. Because for the first time since this nightmare started, I realized something. Celeste and Henry had taken a lot from me. They had stolen years of my life, my trust, my sense of self. But they hadn't taken everything. I still had a choice. I woke up to the smell of coffee and the distant hum of morning news playing on the TV. For a few seconds, I wasn't sure where I was. The unfamiliar ceiling above me, the worn-out couch under my back. It wasn't home. Then it all rushed back. The DNA test, Celeste, Henry, the drive, Everett. I groaned, running a hand over my face. I felt like I had been hit by a freight train. My muscles ached from tension I hadn't let go of, and my head throbbed from the lack of sleep. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't drowning in the noise of my own mind. The pain was still there, but it wasn't all-consuming. I forced myself to sit up, blinking against the light spilling through the living room window. Everett was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with a steaming mug in his hands. He glanced up when he saw me. Figured you'd sleep till noon, he said. Didn't think you'd be up this early. I let out a dry laugh, rubbing my temples. Didn't think I'd sleep at all. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Coffee's fresh, he said, gesturing toward the pot. I dragged myself to the kitchen, pouring a cup. The warmth seeped into my fingers, grounding me in a way I desperately needed. We stood in silence for a few moments, sipping our coffee, the sound of the TV droning in the background. It was the kind of silence only brothers could share, one that didn't need to be filled. Finally, Everett spoke. So, what's next? I exhaled slowly, staring into my cup. That question had been haunting me since the moment I walked out of my house. What was next? I don't know, I admitted. I can't go back. Not yet. Everett nodded. Figured as much. You got a place to stay. I shook my head. I hadn't even thought that far ahead. My entire focus had been on escaping, on putting as much distance between myself and the wreckage of my life as possible. You can stay here, Everett said, for as long as you need. I looked at him, searching his face for any hint of hesitation, but there was none. You sure? I asked. He shrugged. You're my brother. That simple statement nearly undid me. After everything that had been taken from me, after feeling like I had lost my entire identity, here was someone reminding me that I wasn't completely alone. Thanks, I said, my voice rough. Everett clapped a hand on my shoulder. Don't mention it. For the first time since everything fell apart, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't completely lost. The next few days passed in a blur. I stayed at Everett's, barely leaving the house, trying to process everything. He gave me space when I needed it, but he also kept me occupied, dragging me outside for runs, distracting me with meaningless conversations about sports and TV shows, doing everything in his power to keep me from spiraling. It worked, mostly, but the quiet moments were the hardest, the ones where I had nothing to focus on except my own thoughts. That's when the anger crept in, the grief, the overwhelming "what now?" And then there was Celeste. She had stopped calling after the first day, but she hadn't given up. She started texting instead. At first, I ignored them. I didn't want to see her words, didn't want to let her back into my head. But on the third night, when the weight of everything became too much, I opened one. "Celeste, I know you hate me, but please just talk to me." I scoffed, tossing my phone onto the bed. What was there to say? She had made her choices. She had built a life on deception. And yet, I wasn't sure I could move forward without answers. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to see her. Not to fix things, not to forgive, but to finally get the truth. Because if I was ever going to move forward, I needed to close the door on the life I had left behind. I never thought I'd be afraid to walk into my own home, the place where I had spent years building a life, the walls that had held my happiest and most painful moments. It should have felt familiar. But as I pulled up to the driveway, I realized I was looking at a stranger's house. Everything about it was the same. The neatly trimmed lawn, the porch light that Celeste always forgot to turn off, the small crack in the pavement near the mailbox that I had always meant to fix but never did. And yet, it felt foreign, like I had stepped into an alternate reality where I didn't belong. I turned off the engine but didn't move. My hands gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. I could feel the weight of the last few days pressing down on me, the exhaustion of too many sleepless nights, the rage that simmered beneath my skin. Part of me wanted to turn around and drive away, to leave this place behind forever. But the other part, the part that needed closure, kept me rooted in place. I had come here for answers, and I was going to get them. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and walked to the front door. Before I could knock, it opened. Celeste stood in the doorway, eyes wide, as if she hadn't actually expected me to show up. She looked different, not physically. She was still the same woman I had married, the same person I had once loved. But there was something in her expression that I couldn't place. Guilt, fear, maybe both. "Clive?" she breathed, gripping the edge of the door. I didn't respond. I just walked past her into the house. It smelled the same, faintly of coffee and the vanilla candles she always kept on the kitchen counter. The air was warm, too warm, like the house itself was trying to suffocate me. She closed the door behind me. I didn't think you'd come." I turned to face her, my jaw clenched. "You wanted to talk. So talk." She swallowed, wringing her hands together. "I don't even know where to start." I let out a bitter laugh. "Try the beginning." She flinched but nodded, leading me into the living room. The couch where I had spent so many nights watching TV, where we had once sat together planning our future, suddenly felt like a piece of someone else's life. I didn't sit. Neither did she. "Why Celeste?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Why him? Why Henry?" She exhaled shakily, rubbing her temples. "I don't know." I scoffed. "You don't know? It wasn't planned," she said quickly. "It just happened." I clenched my fists. "Don't give me that. Things like this don't just happen, Celeste. You made a choice. Multiple choices." Her eyes filled with tears, but I refused to let myself feel anything for her. "Not anymore." "I was lonely," she whispered. "You were working so much. We barely saw each other. And Henry, he was there." My stomach turned. "So that's your excuse?" "I work too much." "I'm not excusing it," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I messed up. I know I destroyed everything." I stared at her, searching for the person I had once trusted, but I couldn't find her. "Did you ever plan on telling me?" I asked. Her silence was answer enough. I let out a sharp breath, shaking my head. "So what? You were just going to let me raise another man's child without ever knowing?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't know for sure at first. And when I found out," she trailed off, wiping her face. "I was scared. I didn't want to lose you." I let out a bitter laugh. "You lost me the moment you made the decision for me." She opened her mouth to say something, but I held up a hand. "I don't need more excuses. I just need the truth. She hesitated, then nodded. I never stopped loving you, Clive. I let her words hang in the air for a moment before I responded. That doesn't mean anything anymore. Her face crumpled, but I didn't care. I turned toward the door, the weight of the conversation settling deep in my chest. Where are you going? She asked, her voice small. I didn't look back. Somewhere that isn't here. And with that, I walked out of the house that wasn't mine anymore. I didn't look back as I walked away. I didn't hesitate, didn't second-guess my decision. I had spent too much time clinging to something that no longer existed. My marriage, my home, my so-called family. It had all been built on a lie, and now I was finally letting it go. As I got into my car, a strange sense of relief washed over me. The weight that had been crushing my chest since the moment I opened that DNA test. It was still there, but lighter now, like I could finally breathe again. For the first time in days, I wasn't drowning. I drove without a destination in mind, the city fading behind me as the road stretched ahead. The world felt open in a way it hadn't before, full of possibilities I had never considered. For so long, my entire identity had been wrapped around being a husband, a father. Now, I had to figure out who I was without those titles. And maybe that wasn't a bad thing. I ended up back at Everett's house, the only place that still felt like solid ground. He was outside when I pulled in, leaning against the porch railing with a beer in hand. When he saw me, he just nodded. Did you get what you needed? He asked. I exhaled. Yeah. He handed me a beer, and we sat in silence for a while, watching the sky shift from blue to orange as the sun set. It was peaceful, the kind of quiet that didn't need to be filled with words. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lost. You know, Everett said after a while, this doesn't have to be the end. I looked at him, raising an eyebrow. He gestured toward the open road in front of us. You've got a chance most people don't get. A clean slate, no baggage, no obligations. You could go anywhere, do anything. Hell, start over completely. The idea settled deep in my chest, unfamiliar but not unwelcome. A clean slate, a chance to rebuild, not from the ruins of my past, but from the ground up. Yeah, I said slowly, taking a sip of my drink. Maybe you're right. For the first time since my world fell apart, I let myself believe it. I wasn't just a man who had lost everything. I was a man who had been given a second chance. And this time I was going to make it count.